Animal do you think of when you hear the question, what animal is second to humans in wolf rhymes? Weird question, I know, but humor me on this for a minute. You probably think of apes or chimpanzees. But what animal do I think of? Well, ants. One ant alone isn't really that threatening or even really an animal. It's more like a thumb that having developed opinions. But when you take it and put it into a colony of ants, then it turns from a thumb into this. Ants alone have managed to build cities, farms, defend their own territories, raid other territories, create supply lines, and have managed to steal other colonies' larvae, or baby ants? No, larvae from other colonies and use them as their own workers, kind of paralleling to that of humans. Essentially, ants, like humans, made their own civilization and said, instead of words, what if hormones? For the record, I am not disagreeing with scientists when they say like chimpanzees or apes are similar to humans. This is purely for fun, for education, and something that I thought was pretty cool to think about. Using the word war crimes as an analogy, not me saying ants are criminals. You know, with that out of the way, I'm gonna break it down from three different ant colonies or species that I've chosen as examples to be parallels to humans and wolf crimes. The first are army ant, the next will be slave colony ant, and the third will be chemical ant, or ants that use chemicals, not just pheromones. Now, let's start with army ants. Army ants are famous for mass raids. They, depending on the species and the colony stage and size, army ants can range from about 10,000 workers to millions of workers in their raids, organizing and coordinating swarms moving through different types of environments by utilizing their pheromones and local interactions and making one giant trail or supply line. Unlike humans that need to utilize one person to order other people to order other people, the ants just use one person's pheromone and they all just work off of that thing, building off of it and just creating one giant, if your boy's gonna do this, you do this kind of treatment. When army ants attack, some prey colonies either will evacuate or try to defend the entrance. Researchers have observed prey ants carrying their brood or queens away from the nests when army ants attack. Kind of like humans in the sense of take the kids and go. Depending on the ants, such as one example of defending is the Fido supermajor ants that utilize their strong, sizable heads to block the entrances, acting like the door, and preventing ants from counterattacking, entering that way, or just bottlenecking where the army ants have to attack this way, just forcing a 1v1 kind of attack. In this instance, where ants will either force other ants to fight in one specific entrance, or ants to simply swarming and destroying a colony, it's kind of easy to see the parallel between ants and humans, with city assaults and battlefield breakthroughs. One particular example that I will use is the storming of Teocalli by Cortez and his troops. The image on the screen is painted by Emmanuel Nixon, I think that's how I pronounce his name, in 1848, which depicts the Spanish conquistadors attacking the Aztec Empire in what is now Mexico. The parallel between this and ants, again, is just the fact that people manage to overwhelm a city's defenses or by forcing the people to attack in one area. Another example is the Battle of Hamu, which more or less different but same concept in 1813 after Napoleon's defeat at Leipzig and Austro-Bavarian army tried to block his retreat, but Napoleon forced his way through and reopened the route. That army ants kind of just see the barrier and say, forget charging, it's overwhelming, and then keep moving. At this point, I'm going to also quickly mention leaf colony ants, because I think they're cool. Some leaf colony ants, like the Anna and Echromyrmex ants, oh my goodness, they specialize in building fortresses and farming in their colonies. However, like the other ant colony, they are also subject to being raided by ant or army ant colonies such as Namamurmet, Exembeki, and Exembeki ants, which makes a good parallel between them and the Stormy and the Teocalli that I used previously. Now, army ants out of the way, let's get to the slave colony ants. Now we get to the dark comparison between ants and humans, and that is the slave-making ants. The name, this is an actual scientific term. I know it sounds clickbait-ish, but it's real. Researchers use terms like slave-making ants or slave-maker ants, and doulosis, to describe ants that raid other colonies' ants, steal broods, and raise the captured young inside the parasitic colony. Will be sprayed with ample amount of pheromones to essentially indoctrinate and think that it belongs to the parasitic colony that stole it, ultimately indoctrinating it to believe that the captors, or the ants that stole it, are its original family. Now, where in history have we learned about a set of humans going to another colony of humans' habitation, stealing their young, taking them back to the original colony's home, and raising and indoctrinating them to be considered like the new colony? Dark comparison, I know, again, purely for education, and a thing that I thought was pretty interesting to think about. Because essentially what ants do is basically taking the kid, raising the kid, and then handing him a mop and saying, like, this is your life now. Horrible to us humans now that we've realized that slavery was bad, but to ants, and this is a necessity for slave colony ants. In regards to slave-making ants, researchers on Temnothorax americanus describe scouts, raiders, herding behaviors, door guarding, and brood abductions during slave raids to ensure maximum profit. Some act as bit of baits, and they herd adult defenders out of the nest, while other slave raiders will go deep into the colony's nest and look for the larvae and steal them. And then there's a few where the queen will intentionally leave their colony, go to another colony, and try to 1v1 the queen before it is detected and stolen and ripped apart by the colony's defenders. And in order for slave colony ants to be incredibly effective, they use chemical substances to disrupt host defenders deep within the raid, which researchers have described as propaganda substances. essentially the ants spray their facility as they walk by and just essentially chemically induce everyone to panic, but panic in a way that ensures you leave your larvae. And in regards to slave colonies, researchers have also begun to describe slave rebellions in ant systems where enslaved chemothorax workers can kill parasitic brood, abandon the larvae, or even attack parasitic adults and queens when they realize that the pheromone on them is dissipating, if not sprayed constantly. And unfortunately, like humans, recognize that they are not a part of the stolen people's origins or even a part of their group. They tend to produce slave riots or slave rebellions that have, in the long run, been beneficial for humans' growth into realizing that slavery is bad. But slave colony ants behave like humans in the sense of capture the young, erase the original social context, and force them to live and breathe the same air that this parasitic colony breathes, and treat them like they are a part of it. Otherwise, they begin to make slave revolts. Outside of that, now we get to the chemical warfare. Now to the last chemical ants, or more or less fire ants or acid spraying ants. Fire ants, especially Solenopsis species, are famous for their venom. But the venom is not mainly formic acid like some other ants. Fire ant venom is dominated by pyridine alkaloids. Oh my gosh, I never thought I could say that correctly. Anyway, and reviews report that Solenopsis venom is more than 95% alkaloids. Essentially, each fire ant worker carries about 10 to 20 micrograms of alkaloids in their venom sacs. And these chemicals are used to capture, defense, competition, and antimicrobial protection. Essentially, the fire ant's acid or chemical is used for killing, border security, and fire ant bite to anchor themselves and then sting repeatedly onto the person that they grab to ensure maximum acid is being put on the body. Essentially, they are grab, stab, repeat, and never apologize on the person that they have hooked themselves to. Fire ant conflicts as well can be deadly. Research on fire ant combat has examined mortality patterns and interspecies fighting, showing that combat between fire ants and other ants can produce incredible losses depending on the species and context. And because fire ants use chemicals for defense, offense, and survival, it fit perfectly into chemical warfare part of this video. And like ants, humans have used chemical warfare in the past, namely in World War I, but we've done it elsewhere. In this image, in Flanders, some French soldiers made a gas and flame attack on German trenches in Belgium. Mass attacks, there must be a means to defend themselves, and humans made methods to ensure that they do not die from enemy gas attacks. This image is the WAAC gas mask drill from 14 Wings, shows members of the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps wearing gas masks during a drill. Essentially what this video has covered is the comparison between ants and humans. Not the fact that ants are bad, or even that humans are bad, or anything of that nature, but the comparison that what ants do on a normal basis, we humans consider to be in violation of the human rights. That is, namely chemical warfare, slavery, extermination, forced labor, siege, pillage, so on and so forth. ants do these on a normal daily basis right under our feet, and we humans have evolved morally, ethically, and so on and so forth to determine that what nature deems normal, we can decide and deem to be, or we can be better than nature and decide that we should behave more than animals, and still can. And ultimately, this video teaches you that ants are cool as well as destructive. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you for enjoying this. I hope at least I thought this was a pretty cool topic to work on. And if you did enjoy it, please leave a like, subscribe, at least tell me what else I should work on if you want weird historical, scientific, and political comparisons.